So we want to dive right into what we're talking about this morning.
Let's not waste a moment. Let's talk about Dublin redistricting. This has got to be one of the most contentious issues we are covering right now in Central Ohio. So we decided to go to the source. We have Superintendent Dr. John Marschhausen with Dublin City Schools joining us now because, wow, I know you have been through redistricting before as a longtime superintendent in the area, not just in Dublin. Did you expect it to get this heated in the process?
I think we knew that this would engender a lot of emotion. In Dublin, when you look at a community as diverse as ours and the process that we were going to go through, I think we knew it was going to create some significant emotions. I don't think we knew it was going to be this intense. And I think your word choice there is perfect. This has been intense.
Intense, contentious. So here's the deal. There are 3 high schools in Dublin. There's been significant growth in the Dublin area. And so we're going to have to move students so that one school is not busting at the seams. We need to kind of move some students around. At this point, the board is going to meet next week on the 21st to vote on the criteria before sending it to an outside consultant to develop a proposed map for the 27-28 school year. And then June 29th, a map is expected to be presented. Is that the correct timeline of what we're working with?
Yeah, that's the correct timeline. Let me go back for a second if I can. Our voters have twice approved to put an addition on Scioto High School. Mm-hmm. The 2018 levy campaign included additions on both Jerome and Scioto to deal with growth in 2018. And then COVID hit. And then Jerome Village grew more rapidly than we thought it would. So in 2021, the decision was made, rather than putting on 2 additions, let's just add on to Jerome. At the time, Jerome had 24 modular classrooms. Mm-hmm. Then again in 23, the voters chose to put an addition on Scioto High School. So we've been through 2 levy campaigns. We've been through 2 master facilities plans. And at each step, it's been, let's add on to Scioto so we can balance the enrollment in all 3 schools. And now we're kind of at that flashpoint where
we have to
the addition's there. We've spent $50 million. Mm-hmm. The addition's beautiful. It's ready to be opened in August of this year. And how do we get the students over there to stop Jerome High School from getting to 24, 25, 2,600 students and get those high schools all balanced in about the 2,000 student area? So that's really the history of how we got here.
Okay.
And now it's up to us as leaders to say, who are the areas, what are the areas that are going to get moved that allows this balance to take place.
And so last year, the redistricting process started. There were 3 maps. I'm a Dublin mom, and my son would be moved from Jerome to Kaufman based on all 3 maps. And then you paused the process in October. What was the moment that caused you to say, we've got to stop this for a second?
The way our board policy reads and the way Ohio Revised Code reads is the superintendent assigns students to the schools where they go to school. And I took that challenge very seriously, and I worked with Cropper GIS to develop those maps and to put those maps forward to the community. During the process, when community members became concerned, they reached out to their elected officials, the school board, and said, we don't think this is a decision that should be done by just one person. This is too significant. We want the board to have input. And during the time in September and October, our school board said, you know what? We want to have more input in the process as the elected officials. So we stopped and we said, we're going to do this, kind of reverse engineer this. We're going to get all the community input first. So we did this time we did a series of focus groups. We did a scientific community poll.
Surveys, yes.
And we did voluntary surveys. And the elected officials said, we want to be the ones to set the criteria. So as you mentioned earlier, they're working on a resolution now. We had a first reading on Monday. We're going to have a final reading and hopefully a vote on Thursday, the 21st. And then the board will give me, as the superintendent, here are the criteria that we want you to do redistricting by. So our elected officials said, we want a seat at the table in this decision-making process. So that's how we got to here.
Okay.
Once they give me the criteria, then it once again falls back on my shoulders.
Yes.
And the firm that will be drafting the maps.
That outside firm.
The outside
Is
firm.
there going to be more than one map to be released? There will just be one map this time.
Map. When we say maps, one of the things that's in the resolution right now is we may make some changes to middle school attendance boundaries so that the middle school feeder patterns to the high school feeder patterns make sense for the new high school attendance boundaries.
Okay.
So I anticipate there being some middle school redistricting that will align with the high school redistricting so that this can be a decade-long solution. So this is not something we have to go back and do again.
In just a couple of years.
Yes.
So first of all, the rumor mill is, I mean, in high gear. I've never seen anything like it. Everywhere I go, and I'm sure you see that too, everywhere you go, people want to know. So first of all, is there a secret map? Is there a secret map out there? Because everybody that I know knows someone who says they've seen something. Is there a map?
There are no maps, and the maps from the first process are no longer part of any conversations.
Wiped out, starting from scratch.
People will say things about planning blocks. Those were Cropper GIS's tools. When Cropper created the maps last time, we don't have planning blocks. We don't have any maps at this time. Anyone who says they've seen a map is being creative with the truth, because there are no maps, and none of the board members have drawn maps, and I certainly do not have a map.
So in the rumor process, one of the most heated rumors that we've heard recently is when the police chief of Shawnee Hills came out, made a statement about a rumored plan to move students from the Jerome area, the north side, to Scioto, and said, this is a no-go, this won't work because of transportation and safety. And why would he speak to that if there is no map yet?
Well, and I had met with the mayor and the sheriff, police chief of Shawnee Hills back in August. I heard their concerns about the traffic that goes across the O'Shaughnessy Reservoir there on the Glick Road Bridge. We certainly take that into account. I will share that with the firm that makes maps. We've also engaged in large-scale traffic studies. We have members of our community who have done their own traffic studies and sent them to us. The firm that does the map making will also be looking at traffic studies. So certainly the voice of an elected official or a law enforcement officer in one area of our district is important. It's also important to recognize that because of the size of the Dublin City Schools, we're in 3 counties, we're in multiple townships. We work with Union County Sheriff, Dublin Police, Columbus Police, Franklin County Sheriff, Delaware County Sheriff, and all of those different municipalities have different needs that serve their constituents. And they all have perspectives from their seat in which they serve. So of course we will take that into account, but we're also connecting and talking with folks in a lot of different places to get information.
That's a lot of different factions that need a voice in the process.
Yes.
We've seen a legal letter that was reportedly sent to the district right before the process was paused last year, alleging race and socioeconomic factors in this rezoning, they say unconstitutionally, among other concerns. How impactful was the language? Was that language in the pause, and how important was that in the process to say, okay, how are we going to do this differently in this new phase?
I think when we get any letter from an outside legal firm that has concerns about how the district is operating, we immediately get with our legal counsel. And again, there are a lot of different voices and a lot of different opinions on how we should be doing this. And that letter was shared with our legal counsel. That was not the impetus for the pause. The impetus for the pause was the board wanting there to be more input and more voice from our community before we moved forward with an important decision like this.
We are getting lots of voices from the community at this point.
There was a time in public schools where we said, we really wish people would come to meetings, and we really wish we could get the public engaged with our schools. And I think we should have prefaced that for positive things.
For
for things
things.
that we're sharing all the amazing things that are happening in our classrooms. And now we're just moving along through this redistricting
different
process.
Focus when the parents show up. So how much input will the parents have when the map comes out in June?
Our plan right now, my plan right now, is we have all the input that's already been given. The board is synthesizing that input and turning that into a resolution. I'm going to give that to a map making firm, and my hope is on the 29th we will reveal a map, and that map will be the map, and we'll be done with the process and we'll move forward.
And we talk about some of the outlines of this as drawing these new lines to affect the fewest amount of students as possible, including those non-transportable students, those who already live too close to be bused. Is there a number in mind right now of how many Dublin City School students this will, in the end, affect?
Well, I think if we look at the smallest number possible, the ultimate goal is over the 4-year transition to get 600 students from out of Jerome High School and to increase the enrollment at Scioto High School by about 600 students. You could move Jerome to Kaufman, then Kaufman to Scioto. You could move Jerome directly to Scioto. It could be a combination of those. So I think when a firm looks at how are we going to create a map that impacts the least number of students, you also then need to look at the middle schools. Are middle school students going to need to be redistricted based on the number of high school students that are being redistricted? So I would anticipate when we provide a map to the community on June 29th, being able to say, this is the map that the map maker presented. Here's how many students are being moved in total. It's X number of students in middle schools. It's X number of students in high schools. And here's how this map met the criteria that the board outlined for us to follow.
Parents, there are a lot of parents out there who interpret the surveys that you've put out from the district as appearing to craft the beginning of a Jerome to Scioto movement and not Jerome to Kaufman, Kaufman to Scioto. So do you think that's where the rumors are coming from, the loudest voices currently? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think as we move through the process, we started in early February with a board retreat where the board identified a series of issues that were important to the board. Those issues then were part of focus groups. From the focus groups, if there was clear consensus, we kind of started taking things off the table. And then there was a survey by Fallon Research. That was a scientific survey with a margin of error of about 4%. As you look at that, we were able to then narrow down the choices a little more. So when questions were asked and answered, they were removed from the process because we didn't need to keep relitigating them. So when we got to the end, we really were asking only a few questions because those were the important issues that had been left unanswered. So that's why as people started to see where this was going, as we went through each process, there was a little bit more clear direction. And now I think the board is to a point where the board, in terms of the decision that they provide to me, is it moving the least number of students? Is that what's most important? Or is it moving students that are closest to the school buildings in that proximity? Is that the most important? Because those can be competing factors. And that's the direction I'm looking to the Board of Education to provide to me so I can convey that to the firm that will be ultimately creating the maps.
So we've focused on high school students in this redistricting process, and then you mentioned the middle school. Has that come up much? Because I feel like the movement of middle school students hasn't really been a big factor in this process so far.
In our early surveys, it was clear from the community feedback that if you have to adjust middle schools to match the high school attendance zones better, go ahead and do that. So that was one of those early processes that let's get our middle schools aligned with our high schools so cohorts of students can stay together. Throughout this process, that was a theme that continued to come up, was I want my kid to go to middle school with the same students that they go to high school. Those peer groups, those friend groups are so important. We actually heard about it from elementary to middle school from some of our neighborhoods. So as we look at this process, getting middle schools right to feed high schools correctly is important. And I believe the board has reached consensus where they've said they don't want any of our middle schools split more than twice. That is in the draft resolution, which would mean that we wouldn't have a middle school that sends kids to all 3 high schools. So as we go through this, that's clear direction that the community gave the board listened, the board gives that clear direction to me, and then I work with the firm to make sure the map ultimately meets the will of the board.
So May 21st, next school board meeting, June 29th, the map is expected to be presented. What's your message to the parents out there about this process, what you want them to know?
Well, there are times as superintendent, you stay up at night and you can't go to sleep because there are heavy issues. This issue has created a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety for many of us. But at the end of the day, I know, and I have no doubt at all, 5 years from now, Dublin will be a stronger school district, and all of the students at all 3 high schools will be getting a Dublin quality education. This has created anxiety for people, but I believe our teachers, our schools, the opportunities that we provide in Dublin are elite at all 3 high schools, and it's going to be okay. So if we can get through this, we put this to bed, we get the kids where they need to be, and we'll be in a much better place.
All right.
Dr. John Marschhausen, we really appreciate you coming in. Will you come back and chat with us more about this in the next step of the process?
Sure. Happy to come back with you after the maps are done and talk about how we got here and talk about how we're moving forward.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us here on The Big Picture.